So I realized that the game I was playing is very bright in color and has flashy moving objects. With that in mind, I give the warning right here in the beginning before we start. But just be warned, there's just a lot of flashing lights, a lot of moving things, and just want to give you a little heads up. Be warned. Be warned. Okay, let's go. Hey there guys! Alright, today's video I'll be a teeny bit different from what I usually do. It'll be a chatting video alright, but with more of a philosophical twist that still connects to anime and games. I even plan on bringing in my more, professional music friends to help sort my ideas, support my ideas, and probably just to help get some facts straight. Alright, so let's get on to the introduction then. So then, I'm sure some of you have heard of the infamous chaos language, or I suppose you can call it the nonsense language. You've probably heard them in games as just random voices or words put together in different medias. We may hear this type of music and think it sounds beautiful, but then we don't even understand what the lyrics are because most of the time it's not even in English or in any language that we can translate it into. But in a way, it's strange, isn't it? That these types of songs can still bring us to tears, to hatred, to fear, to anger, or to even happiness. The fact that something is being sung with vocals that we can resonate with, but we can't really understand what's being said. Even without visual help, we can still get an idea of what or how the musician wants us to feel. This is a topic I want to talk over today. I'm going to be doing a bit of a deep dive here and explain how even though we as the audience don't understand what is being said, we can still feel the emotion that the musician wants us to feel. It's something that I've been kind of eager to really talk about for some time now. And honestly, what really sparked it was obviously the music of Keiichi Okabe as well as Emmy Evans in the game series Nier. Some few honorable mentions have to be Okorion's ending song Omni Magna, which was done by Makina Yui. I'll mention a few others that pop in my head as we go. To start off, we'll be using an operative definition here. This is so that we don't get lost as I'm chatting and spiraling further into the video. Okay, like I said, to start things off, we start with my definition of music. So, my definition of music is a form of art that can help move people into feeling a certain way or evoke a sense of emotion, whether it be sad or happy or whichever one. In my view, at least, everything except AI can be potentially seen as an art form. Interior designing is an art form, book binding is one, coding can be one, heck, even being a journalist, like scrapbooking, is one. It all comes down to how the pieces they make can bring someone to feel something or has a cohesive feeling once it's complete. For example, an interior designer can make a room feel gloomy by using the right colors or furniture at the right places of the room. Yeah, this is the definition that we'll be using for our foundation. It's interesting because in the interior designing example, it's kind of like the designer didn't use words but rather showed it through their work. Okay, to make sure I'm in the right lane, I've brought in 3 guests to help me along this music creator's journey. I'll give you a quick rundown of who they are and then get their insights. They might even tell you on their own.
I'm here to talk about music. I have over a decade of musical experience and I love it more than anything. I've worked for over 100 VTubers to capture a myriad of unique sounds. My dream is to go back home to Japan and become a real virtual idol. Ha!
I am Plush Poppy, house husband, stream professor, literal genius, if you ask me, self-proclaimed. I'm a little cartoon guy on the internet. I make music sometimes. I edit videos sometimes. I stream sometimes. I do a little bit of everything. I try to be knowledgeable in a little bit of everything when it comes to like creating content on the internet. Yeah!
Hi everyone, this is Yuto's voice coming from Yuki's voice. I mean Yuto, was pretty busy at the time of this recording. A lot of awesome projects and collabs with other cool creators and even making sets to play is really taxing. Did I mention that I'm in graduate classes also? So, yeah, But I'm Yuto, a Sun Spirit VTuber that specializes in anything music, especially DJing. I have a few releases underneath my belt and pretty confident in what I do. Nice to meet you guys. Alright, now that you guys have the gist of the topic, let's talk about the history of it. Now, quote-unquote nonsense language is a type of language that can have almost anything in it. It's all according to the vocalist's wishes, actually. So, for example, it can have maybe Latin with a mix of Greek and a mix of a hidden language that could be unfortunately dying out. Or it can maybe even use backwards English. Utara hikaru, hey. With a mix of older known languages that are barely transcribable. There can technically be anything in language as long as it sends the message of music home. The best part is that all this mixing and adding is how languages can technically form. Honestly, I wasn't really sure what to call it aside nonsense language, but after looking it up, it's called Conlanging. Conlanging, which is a constructed language, according to Google, is a language that is artificially created. This means that a person would take another language and modify it, which would technically create a new language like a language 2.0. Or create one from scratch by using letters, sounds, and things that help communication through speech. And so when you think about all these different types of ways to create a language, I honestly just found it very fascinating. A language, to be honest, is interesting on its own because, like I said, it's a way of communication. Each language out there is its own manual of communication, from how grammar is used and how certain words are pronounced, to how certain letters are used to confirm gender or how certain words are placed to make a sentence. It's also interesting, and the best part is that musicians have the ability to break down a language of their choosing, or multiple languages of their choosing, to create a new manual of communication, their very own, to communicate with their audience. My run-in with Conlang was actually through anime. It was through an anime called Aquarion and also through another one called The Vision of Escaflowne. The first one was from Aquarion, I think the first ending actually, called Omna Magni by Makino Yui. And apparently from looking at the Aquarion fandom wiki, I'm sorry I couldn't find any other place to find the information, this song apparently has a conlang of Latin, Greek, Gaelic, Russian, and other Romance languages like Spanish and French. After listening to it again, I can see how Latin is mixed in there, especially with the title of the song being in Latin too. Omna meaning everything and Magni meaning large. The other song, which is from The Vision of Escaflowne, is called Sora's Song by Yoko Kanno. After scouring around on the internet, it looks like Yoko Kanno tends to use English, Latin, and a few other languages that are in the romance category. But the difference between Makino Yui and Yoko Kanno is how they ended up using those languages they picked or created, I suppose, and how they made the songs they did with those languages they created. Like, maybe one artist had used more Latin than the other, or maybe they used more impactful words from other languages to make more emphasis in their songs. Like, honestly, it really just depends on the artist at this point. They could use the same languages, but both ultimately end up with two vastly different songs. They might even sound similar, but the meaning and the feel could be completely different.
Okay, I know that's not Conlang, that's like actual Latin, but when I think that my earliest interaction with something that I felt like kind of encapsulated the feeling of Conlang was the Super Smash Bros. Brawl soundtrack, which is actually, like I said, I think it's real Latin. It's really, really beautiful. It's a fantastic song. The lyrics are engaging, and it's really just about what it's supposed to be about, like people going straight up into battle, fighting. I've never heard Conlang used in Nier Automata, for example, but I'm excited to get into it. As someone who makes games myself, I've heard of Conlang. I've been interested in making a language, even back to like when I was a kid and trying to make fake languages for comics that I would make. But the act of actually doing it and like making a language from scratch, it's fascinating, but certainly much more challenging than you might think.
Now I move on to some real life examples that I feel can be similar to Conlang. So off the top of my head, I'd say that the closest type of music similar to Conlang would be opera and scat. I chose opera because in plain hearing, when I listen to opera at least, I can definitely hear some Latin, but then other times I feel like I can hear some other languages too. So I did some research a bit to douse my curiosity. Turns out that many different languages are used in opera. You have Italian, German, French, English, Spanish, Russian, there's a lot, to name a few, really. Because of the way it's sung, I don't think I can tell the difference between each language, and obviously I don't know much of the other languages either. But then my brain gets to thinking, wouldn't it be technically possible to have an opera song, right, that contains 2 or more different languages in it? I think it can, because you can have one portion of the song be in French and then the last portion of the song be in Latin. Or if you want to make things more interesting to the audience, you can technically add in words from a different language into the song's main language to add more emphasis and more uniqueness. I know that it's a well-renowned art form of music, so maybe someone may have created an opera piece made of constructed language by now, but either I've yet to hear it or I just didn't dig deeper into this vein of thought. And then there's scat. Now, my first impressions of this type of music is that it deals more with improvising or adding sounds on the spot in music to give it more of a groove. According to, well, the great Google, scat is the type of vocal singing where it's improvised and imitates an instrument. After looking around, it's been established that the singer, when singing in scat, becomes an instrument that creates sounds to match the flow of the music. The best part about this type of music, at least to me, is that it's literally all improvised, meaning that it may not be the same type of humming sound in one show compared to the previous show. I know we've heard of Louis Armstrong a few times in our lives, at least. And of the times I've heard him, I can say his scat singing was interesting because he sounded very forceful like a trumpet. And so comparing scat to Conlang, I'd say is very much possible then to compare the two. Like, language, in my opinion, can be anything because it's a form of communication. So technically, it doesn't have to be using actual words. It can honestly just be vowels, humming or just a tone. If those vowels, hummings, and tones deliver a message or some form of communication, then those are just the beginnings of a language. That's how I see scat as. And even though it's created on the spot, it still makes us feel what the singer is trying to portray. It's as if people who use scat are saying regular words aren't enough to show how we want the audience to feel, so we'll use humming to send that extra oomph or excitement. In my opinion, scat is kind of like conlanging because these singers create a certain tone or language right then and there for the audience to feel. Because I can imagine how scat can be done wrong if it's not sung right. Like, for example, if a singer was singing a jazz song about a breakup and then included a croon-like hum to show their heartbreak, this would be just enough of the emotion to show to the audience of the intense feeling that they have about this song. All in all, scat to me is a form of conlang that is pretty interesting, especially since most of the time it's not even words being used, and especially because it's just really improvised on the spot.
Considering scat or opera, conlang depends on your definition of conlang. My honest thought is both of them are different. Opera uses actual languages such as Italian, German, French. I hear a lot of opera in Italian. And scat is just made up words that don't even mean anything. So conlang can be, I feel like the example that I am most interested in getting to know is the Nier Automata example. The interesting thing about Nier Automata's language is that, like Klingon, it has like an actual lexicon. I think actually like all the words mean something, all the sounds mean something. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Put a huge YouTube destruction bomb on me if I'm wrong. But scat doesn't have any meaning, though. I don't think scat has dictionary or or meaning. So I don't think that scat or opera could be considered conlang, because opera exists with real words in real languages, and also scat is just made up words without meaning.
As far as Italian, there may be a bit more. I mean, as far as opera, I'm pretty sure opera is an Italian, right? But as far as like hip hop and scat, those are definitely in the moment feelings type of vibes. If you look at how a lot of new age rappers actually write their music, it's like they usually start by creating like an improvising track, and then they'll be like ba da 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 da, and then they'll fill in the words of it, like I was there when you know what I'm saying. Scat and jazz are one of the forefathers of current day hip hop and current day rap as well, you know.
Question 1. Do you think words or some kind of language, for example like scat, is necessary to portray emotions? And Yuto said, I do not believe words or language is necessary to portray emotions, as there are numerous examples out there of pieces that can evoke emotions without lyrics or words attached. However, the skillful addition of words or language to a piece can serve to elevate the level of emotionality of a piece. For example, the song Rays of Light from the Automata features several different versions, some with languages, some without, and while the instrumental does evoke emotion, the version with the language brings further emotionality out of this instrumental piece. Now that I've brought in examples for you to relate to, let's get to the meat of it. Games and anime, baby! Okay, now I know we've heard this type of music where it sounds like complete nonsense, but I can bet that whoever artist you were listening to who was using it knew exactly what they were doing. Because not gonna lie, conlanging, if done correctly, is so soothing and interesting to hear, because you can hear all this type of words that you don't know of and then just relax and vibe. I'm gonna bring in 3 big boys, at least to me, that can help clarify conlang just a bit more. And basically all this is to raise more awareness of conlang, and also so I can talk about this. Okay, let's bring in one of the oldies, ladies and gentlemen, Yuki Kajira. Now she is such a heavy hitter. She is essentially as famous as Lisa, in my opinion, in the soundtrack world. She's made works for Sword Art Online, Magica Puella Madoka, Demon Slayer, some Gundam Seed pieces, Hack Sign, Pandora's Hearts, and even Erased. But for now, we'll be talking about her most known works, which are from Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle. The anime was a part of a long series of Sakura and Sharon from the Clamp series, the Clamp Studio. I'm so sorry. Alright. Yuki Kajira was the main composer for the whole series, which is an amazing feat. Throughout her songs and music in the series, some are mostly orchestral with no lyrics, but there are a few that do contain some vocals. Songs like Ring Your Song was actually in English, and then came in songs like, A Song of Storm and Fire. This one was played during chasing scenes and exploration scenes, or just anything that had a lot of action in general. Aside the scenes, the language and the music is the important one here. After doing some research, I came across a site that had contained a lot of resources on her style as a composer, especially as a lyrical musician person. Yeah. The site is called cantperme.net. I did not pronounce that well. I gotta say, I've seen many fan sites, but this just takes the cake. According to the site, her conlang, as she dubbed it, is Kajurago, which is an interesting take because it literally translates into Kajira language. See, in Japanese, Nihongo means Japanese language. Nihon meaning Japan, and Go means language. So then it's literally a language named after her work. I love it. So, according to an interview on Anime Giga, a talk show from 2007 to 2010, they had asked her questions about her work, and she explained that her language is essentially, in a way, meaningless. She went on to also say that yes, she uses Latin, Italian, and other languages. I'm honestly thinking Romance languages as well in her Kachurago. And this is specifically because she didn't want the scene to match the music. This directly proves my point that sometimes maybe other languages can portray more feeling more than the one you know can portray it. Alright, question 2. Do you think it would be harder to write your music with vocals if there were some parts that couldn't be correctly shown through the English language? And he said, by the way, English works, yes. Words have meaning, and you can't just throw them together and call it a day. As such, it's important that when you use language, you have to pay attention to the meaning of the words, and in some situations, the way they're pronounced can change the meaning of the word entirely. If there is a message you want to convey that can't be captured within a specific language, like English, then when selecting a language that will properly convey said message, one must take care in the usage of the language and understand the culture behind it. So like for example, you know you can sing in English, that's fine, but like maybe it's not powerful enough to show what you're trying to show, if that makes sense. Like, there's a reason why Latin is used a lot more, because it can show an emotion more than a single word can in English or maybe French. She continued on by saying this one part that I honestly love the most. So during the interview, according to the site, they asked why even use kajurago, and she said she chose to construct a language because it wouldn't be quote unquote shackled by meaning, and therefore can allow more freedom to both the composer and the listener. This freedom right here is amazing, because if the composer isn't shackled to just one language, then the music they can produce can literally be interpreted in many different ways. If you use actual lyrics, like a regular English, they can take their own forms by itself, which I believe is fine, no problem. But depending on the message you want to send, it might sometimes be harder than just simply using a constructed language. From this interview, I can definitely say that she uses her own constructed language when she wants to use vocals. She uses kajurago so that she can connect to her audience in a way that can be different psychologically for each person. She said this part in an interview actually. It's an amazing concept because it's the fact that she knows that kajurago is meaningless, but can make the song meaningful with her language as she goes. Also, as an oldie anime watcher, I'm just now recognizing her signature even as a composer with no lyrics in older anime like My Hime and especially the Hack series. Other songs you can catch her kajurago are Once Upon a Time There Was You and Me, and Her Wings from Magica Puella Magi Madoka Magica. I kind of get that title sequence a little bit mixed up. I'm so sorry. And A Stray Child from Dot Hack Sign.
Well, after listening to A Song of Storm and Fire, I was immediately reminded of my favorite records from Ayumi Hamasaki, who is one of my favorite idols of all time. Just the 90s Eurobeat flavor of the track was like super evocative of her. My favorite songs from her, like Boys and Girls and Trauma. And I can hear the Conlang, and it's very convincing. Sounds like an actual language, an actual dialect. And kaiju rago is a very interesting concept. Latin, Italian, I can sort of pick up those vibes, and I think that they work really well in the context of this song. But yeah, I was reminded of and very happily surprised to hear those kinds of 90s Eurobeat influences in a song that sounds really serious and evocative of a very dire and intense moment. At least I believe the Conlang was used in that one. I listened to the Dot Hack track, and it was definitely English. It's very hauntingly beautiful, but definitely English.
I was just about to say, it also leaves it up to your own interpretation, which is super important. Every artist a lot of artists would rather, how do I put it? A lot of artists would rather you interpret the work how you would like to than have their direct intentions perceived. And I understand that a lot. You know, I one thing people be like, when I write a song, a love song or something, people be like, oh, who'd you write that about? When it's like, it's not always like that. Sometimes when I write songs, it's about, sometimes I'll be like, oh, this song is about a specific girl, but then there'll be times where a song is about a mishmash of a bunch of girls that I knew, and they got mixed together.
Next on the list is Project Millie. Now, Project Millie is, and hold your horses. Okay, now this video got pretty long during editing, and then along with inputting audio and all that stuff. So I thought, let's just split this into 2 parts, maybe 3. I have no idea. So that means by the time you hear this speech, the second part or third, I don't know, is already up. If you enjoyed the talk so far, consider hopping on to the next video to hear the next few examples. And yeah, I'll see you soon then.